everybody, and thank you for joining us for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm sitting in for Steve Fredland this week. My name's Jim Reed, and if you want to learn about me and other members on the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. I am just one of the many amazing people here at Rec Poker. It takes a team, it takes a village, it takes a couple sponsors. Two of them are website AMP and the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. So now that we got that out of the way, every week we're joined here by a special guest. This week we've got Sky Matsuhashi, and just before I throw to him to welcome him into the room, we're going to meet the rest of the panel. Panel, how are you today?
Good. I'm Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter.
And he's John Somsky, and he's muted at the moment, but that's just part of his bit.
Yeah, well, it takes a little longer when you have something so important to say, kind of work your way into it. Anyway, I'm John Somsky, Poker Geek MN everywhere, and I have a quote today from Jesse May. Poker is a combination of luck and skill. People think mastering the skill part is hard, but they're wrong. The trick to poker is mastering the luck.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. If you can bottle that, let us know. Mastering the luck. I love it. So we're going to start chatting with Sky in just a second, but I told Steve that I had to promote this Run Good series event that's happening in Council Bluffs, Iowa on June 22nd to 28th. There's going to be a Rec Poker house there. We're ramping up these Rec Poker road trips. So there's somewhere to stay. There's somewhere to hang out with the Rec Poker crew and talk about poker, talk about bust outs, figure out how you could have played that hand a little differently, and have a lot of fun along the way. So keep your eyes peeled. You go to rec.poker/road trips, and you can see that and some other fun stuff coming up. But enough about that. We are here to talk to the one, the only Sky Matsuhashi. Sky, thank you so much for joining us on the show this week.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, when Chris Jones told me that the theme of the month was going to be leaks and how to find them and how to plug them and how to exploit them, I knew that this was the month we had to have Sky back on the show. When I was getting started with PokerTracker4 and HUDs and Note Tracker, Sky was one of those great people on Twitter who was really generous with his time. We emailed back and forth a bunch of times. He saved me all sorts of steps in my own poker learning journey. And, we do so much free stuff here at Rec Poker. And Sky is just such a good complement to that. He does so much free stuff. There's so many great free training videos out there on the Smart Poker Study YouTube channel. And I know you've got the Poker Forge, the training site, which we're all really excited to be joining you on. But really, the idea of leak busting and PokerTracker4 and filters and reports and breaking people down in the lab, that's what gets HUD nerds like me excited. So can you just talk a little bit about how valuable it is to be able to study for leaks, and whether it's in yourself or for other people?
Well, absolutely. It's the most valuable thing that you could do with your study time, or at least not the most valuable thing, but it's the thing that guides the rest of your study time. Once you realize that calling 3-bets is where you're losing all your money, now skip the c-betting stuff, skip the open raising, skip the ISO raising, focus on calling 3-bets, make better calls, you cut out those losses. And I truly believe, like just like in life, a penny saved is a penny earned. In poker, a big blind saved is a big blind earned 100%. So if you can find those leaky areas, then you know where to direct all your studies.
Yeah, that I love that, because study time is really not an infinite resource particularly for recreational players. A lot of us, we have real jobs. Even finding time to play is difficult. So, so once we feel like we have the time to do that and we've got some time set aside, what do you think is sort of like, as beginners, as people who are learning how to study this kind of thing, what should we be thinking about, and what kind of tools can we use to help with that?
The number one tool, so if you're a live player, your number one study tool would be like your mind. And you realize, I always have a difficulty in this spot, out of position, calling c-bets on ace high boards, whatever that spot might be. That's where you're going to direct your studies, because you don't have, like for us online poker players, we have PokerTracker4 that tells us exactly where our issues lie, assuming you know how to use the program. Live players, you got to use your intellect, whatever the tough spots are, whatever the confusing spots, the things that I just don't know what to do in this spot. You're always folding, you're always calling and losing chips. Either one of those, that's where you want to direct your studies. But for us, PokerTracker4, once you find that leak, the number one tool is PokerTracker4, right? You're playing hands on a site that allows that saves hands to your database. And now you can go in, not only can you find your leaks, but you could just review all your different hands. You can see what happened in this hand where you lost 50 big blinds. How did I win 100 big blinds in this other hand? Dive into those hands. PokerTracker4 is the #1 software. And then beyond that, for me, FlopZilla Pro is the #1 equity calculating software. When you're reviewing hands, you enter in your opponent's hand, your hand, see what the equity difference is. You enter in your opponent's range, your hand, see how your hand plays against their entire range. Like those two programs for me, I use on a daily basis, not only for my own studies, but for all of my students as well.
Sky, one of the things that I often hear from rec, maybe they've got PokerTracker4, they've installed it, they're excited to use it, they want to, they dedicate some study time, but then they kind of run into the like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of data here, there's a lot of things to look at. I mean, you could dig into like, you know, what is your 5-bet calling range on, you know, paired board, you know, like you can do anything you want with this tool. So how, with that sort of like, you know, ability to sort of be overwhelmed by it, where do people start? Like, what is something that people should be looking at the most in terms of like, okay, this is what I want to be looking at when I'm first using this tool to like start to improve my game?
Yeah, the first thing you want to do is what I would recommend if you're brand new to PokerTracker4, you just started playing and you have a hand database of like 2,000 hands, there's not much to go through just yet to sift through. Look at your biggest losing hands, like where you lost 180 big blinds. So those can often point you in the right direction. When you lost 100 big blinds, you can review that hand because PokerTracker4 saves the exact data that happened. It's not like live poker where I think he bet 20 big blinds and then I called. No, in PokerTracker4, you see he bet exactly 22 big blinds. You check raised to 44, he went all in and you called on a draw, whatever the case may be, right? You can analyze those big and medium losing hands to find where you think your mistakes lie. And then from that point, once you think, oh man, I'm making terrible check raises on the flop, you could do some studying, find some books, podcasts, training videos online for check raising strategies, right? Learn some strategies, then go back to your database, review those check raising opportunities to see if this was a good one, that was a bad one, I should have done this, I used a terrible sizing, whatever it might be, once you do some study strategies. And then after that, after you do your studying, review your database, find your mistakes, then you take it to the felt. And that's where you do, like you take action with what you learn. And that's what with all poker development or development in anything, right? Like taking action is the most important thing. If you're a basketball player, you're not going to improve your free throws if you never shoot free throws, right? So that's what you got to do for poker. When you learn good strategies, when you find your mistakes, the next few times on the felt, you work to employ those strategies and avoid those mistakes.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I'm a poker tracker addict. I think it's just such a huge advantage to anyone who's using it. And like when you are getting started, I remember for me, one of the helpful things was using the tags. So you could tag individual hands that came up. And I just had a tag that was just, I'm unsure what to do here. I just call it, because you can program those in however you like. And it's just one that said live and unsure. And at the end of my session, I would just look for all the hands that had that tag, and I would have a chance to kind of just review the spots that I didn't feel like I was very comfortable. And that was really helpful. How do you now, because you've got such a big database, how do you look at your own data when you're trying to study or find areas for you to work on, or even just in the course of like weekly review as part of your play? How do you look at your own stuff?
Yeah, I record my stats and my win rates by running various filters. Well, first the stats. The PokerTracker4 just shows you your stats for whatever time frame, however many hands you've played, how often you're voluntarily putting money in the pot, 3-betting, c-betting, calling c-bets. That stuff is right there. I track that on a weekly, more like a bi-weekly basis for me because I don't play all that much anymore. Track that bi-weekly and I can see how my stats are going up and down. And ideally, my studies and my focused play are impacting my stats, right? Maybe, for example, I know from the past 1 month of playing and tracking my stats, I'm not double barreling enough. I see bet on the flop 70%. I see bet on the turn 30%. Holy cow. I'm such a turn honest player. I've got to get that percentage up to get them closer because when you're turn honest and you don't double barrel, all your opponents know I'm going to call him on the flop. As soon as he checks that turn, he doesn't have anything. I am betting and taking it down. So the goal is to not give my opponents that easy strategy, but instead c-bet at 30 on the flop, on the turn 70, bring those closer together. Let's imagine I did some studying, I'm playing with purpose, and now the next time I record my stats, my c-bet on the flop goes to 65, on the turn it goes to 55. I've made some good improvement there. Maybe not exactly where I want to be, to where it's even, not that it has to be even, but at least I'm not as honest. I don't have such an easy exploit against me anymore. And so that's what I do. And to help the Rec Poker audience, I have my cash game tracker and my tournament tracker for anybody to download. All they have to do is go to smartpokerstudy.com/cash game statistical tracker. I know it's long, but all one word, cash game statistical tracker, or smartpokerstudy.com/tournament statistical tracker. And they can download a Word document that just shows them all the stats that I track, all the win weight and all the win rates that I track. And as you just start tracking them every other week, every 5,000 hands, you'll start to see patterns and you'll start to notice numbers and say, wait a second, I'm too low here, I'm too high here. What should I do to correct those issues?
I love that. And I think that's, I mean, even we talk about PokerTracker4 a lot, but even if you're playing live or if you're playing online and you just don't want to invest $100 in PokerTracker, just keep notes, just keep records, and just be honest with yourself and track it honestly, because that's the biggest help for anybody. The problem is we are unreliable narrators for our own play and our own success. And you need to be able to shine a light on it objectively and see where you're getting out of line. I like the segue about cash games, because Rec Poker is mostly tournament based in a lot of our membership. But I grew up playing cash. I love cash. And I think in cash, that's where you really get a chance to exploit a particular opponents, where you get to really take advantage of people with a large sample of set of hands, with deep stacks, all the fun stuff about poker that we like. So when you're in a situation like that, when you're realize that you've got someone that's at the table with you often, and you want to either lose less to them or win more from them, how would you recommend someone approach that situation when you're here?
The thing you need to do is learn, well, obviously, just like live poker, tournament, cash game, everything, you're always paying attention to their actions. So if this player who you play a ton with, if they limp a lot and fold to raises, you're going to ISO raise them and steal that limp in the blinds a ton. If they limp and then call a lot, maybe you won't ISO bluff like with ace-9 offsuit, but instead ISO raise them with a stronger hand because you know they're going to call. So ISO raise with your ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack because they're going to call with all their weaker hands, and now you can exploit them post-flop. So utilize those reads based on their actions, what you know about the player, just in general. And the second thing is utilizing your HUD, your heads-up display. Now, PokerTracker4 comes with a great default HUD. I sell my own smart HUD. You can find HUDs from just about any kind of coach out there, content creator and stuff. But you need to spend the time to learn your HUD. What does VPIP, what does PFR mean specifically? Now, what is the relationship between those two mean? How can I use those two stats to determine what kind of player I'm up against? And based on those stats, what kind of exploits can I just generally use against that kind of player? Because if somebody's a fish, like a 40/5 player, they play 40% of hands, but they only raise 5. You're exactly, I see you rubbing those hands, Jim. You love those players. Those are your targets at the table, 100%. But you're going to play against them differently than an 18-17 player. 18-17, super tight aggressive. He only plays 18% of hands. Most of the time, 17%, he's coming in for a raise. You're going to exploit him much differently than that loose passive fish.
Yeah, I love that. I always think about different exploits as sort of candidates that are available for you to use. They're different arrows in the quiver. And, you might have a few different kinds of arrows that you might use for different applications. I'm kind of killing the metaphor here a little, but, you want to use the right tool for the job. And certain villains, you want to use a different tool than you would on other villains. So I think that's just how you should be approaching poker. It's a series of spots, unique spots against unique villains. They all have a lot in common, and so we can develop some general rules to make life easier, but it's a problem-solving game. So I love that.
And I love that metaphor. If you think about Hawkeye from the Avengers movies or even
Now you're
Rambo,
talking,
some of
yeah.
those are explosive tips, some of those are grappler tips, some of them are, I don't know, just shoot through your opponents, shoot through 5 opponents tips. So you're good. I like that metaphor.
Chris, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, you know, a lot of this, both looking at our HUDs and and looking at our own databases. I've heard various sort of thoughts about sample size, and I'm wondering if you can talk about like how much of this do we need to see before we can start making different judgments and start making decisions, or running that exploit on somebody who's running 45 but we've only seen him for 3 hands, you know, like what, how much of this do we need to compile before we can start acting on it?
I think you can, well, it depends on the statistic, right? You still want to pay attention to your reads. If somebody's limping in and it's only been 5 hands against them, but they've limped in 4 times, they're a fish. Like no ifs, ands, or buts. You only have a sample size of fish or of 5. They are a fish though, limping in that much, right? But when it comes to sample sizes, you really want to look at not your total number of hands, but the number of opportunities within that one stat, right? So let's say 3-bet, for example. A 3-bet of 20%. Whoa, that's hecka high. They're 3-betting me. I'm raising, they're re-raising 20% of the time, 1 out of every 5. Well, I just said it. That 20% might only be 1 out of 5, right? So that number 20% looks juicy. Looks like he's a 3-bet bluffer. I can come over the top with a 4-bet rebluff on him. But it's only 1 out of 5 opportunities is not really telling yet. But 20% out of 20, 4 out of 20, that's a little bit more. This guy likes the 3-bet. 20 out of 100, he loves the 3-bet right there. So the bigger that sample size, not your total number of hands that you have on the player, 100, 200 hands, you might have 200 hands on a player, but when it comes to like facing a c-bet, for example, they might have only 200 hands on the player. They might have only faced a c-bet twice ever. And that might be because they hardly ever call pre-flop. If you don't call pre-flop, you're never going to face c-bets, right? So you have to really look at that opportunities. That's the key thing right there. And like I said earlier, pay attention to their exact actions. If somebody donk bets for 1 big blind and they also limped 4 times previously, guaranteed a fish once again, right? So pay attention to their exact actions, and bet sizing can clue you in too. Oh, one thing also, people don't often think about it, but their stack size matters. When you're playing at a table and you have 3 players who buy in for 40 big blinds, there's a really good chance those are recreational players. Maybe they know what they're doing, maybe they study, but buying it at 40 just shows that they don't really, they're not trying to win as much as they can. They don't want to buy in for 100 to try to double up or take the other 100 big blind players stack. They're starting with 40 and they just want to double up to 80, or they just don't want to risk a lot of money. So that's a key thing. And no, there's no HUDs thinking about. Just think about your live poker games too. Somebody who buys in at a 1-2 cash game for $40. Yeah, they're just a risk taker, recreational player.
Yeah, so sample size is something that comes up a lot, especially in tournament play. You know, if we're playing MTTs, we're not going to be able to build the same size database on a lot of these players. And so, like the HUD I use is way too busy and comprehensive for a tournament play. It's meant for cash. These guys give me a hard time about it all the time. But we do have a rec poker HUD that's more geared towards like clear, smaller, easier to read. It's more, you know, you can click through and see more detail there, like similarly to the way that you've designed yours. Because the key is to get a lot of information available just at a glance.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to tournament play specifically, you know, the pre-flop hands stats are going to aggregate faster than the flop hands, than the turn. Are there post-flop stats? There's this real sort of divide, I think, in the poker industry about how helpful are post-flop stats in tournament play. Are there some that you think really jump out, like c-bet or fold to c-bet or stuff like that?
Yes. For me, because I strive for bread and butter poker, and that's something I learned from Tommy Angelo in Elements of Poker. Bread and butter poker is you're the pre-flop raiser in position against 1 or 2 opponents. That is the most profitable spot to be in. Just imagine you raise pre-flop, the big blind called. That's a bread and butter spot, right? He's got a weaker range because he just called. You're whatever position you are, but you open raise. You have aces, kings, queens in your range. He just called. He doesn't have those hands, right? So you have so many advantages in that spot. And that's the spot I strive to be in. So in my HUD, I really want to look at my opponent's fold to flop and fold to turn c-bets, because I strive to be the c-better. I want to see how often they're folding. And I also want to see it in position versus out of position. because some players are really quick to fold when out of position. But when they are in position, they think to themselves, he c-bets, I can call right now. On the next street, he might check. As soon as he checks, I'm going to bet in position and take it down, right? So I want to see the difference between their in position and out of position. And I agree with you. In tournaments, maybe somebody doesn't call a ton of c-bets, so they don't face a lot, so you don't get a big sample size. But your biggest targets at the table, the limpers, the callers, the fish, they face a ton of c-bets. In 50 hands on the player, their fold to c-bet stat will start to accumulate pretty darn quickly, and you can start to get a pretty good read on, on how they respond to c-bets.
Yeah, yeah, like that. That's perfect. We actually, I just want to take off something you mentioned earlier about FlopZilla. Such a great program. We do a monthly series called The Focus that Chris Jones leads us on, where we look at different parts of poker. We've been talking about Equilab and PT4 and FlopZilla a lot recently. What do you think is the best use of FlopZilla? Because one thing that we've had trouble with is we've got all these great tools out there, and sometimes we're not sure which is the best tool to use for the job. It's like the archery thing again, right? So we've got all these great specialized tools. What do you think is the best way to use FlopZilla? What's the best thing to use it for? How do we get the most out of it?
The best thing to use it for is hand reading. And what that is, it's assigning your opponent a pre-flop range of hands, their entire range. They call the pre-flop. These are all the hands that fit their tendency to call, right? You pit your hand against them to see your hand's equity, and then you enter the boards. And as the progression, this is something you do off the felt, studying away from the felt. As the hand progresses through the streets, you narrow their range. So maybe they started pre-flop with 30% of hands, but then based on their flop action, you can narrow them down to 20%. On the turn, narrow them down to 10%. And so that is the number one practice. Now, hand reading can be a bit complicated, difficult to learn. So before you learn that, the number one thing with FlopZilla is building your opponent's range every single time you play a hand with them pre-flop. So you tagged a hand, like you said earlier, Jim, like you back in the day, you created an unsure hand, right? When you're unsure about the play. Well, that's perfect. The next day when you study, pull up those unsure hands. The first part of getting sure is understanding your opponent's ranges. So your opponent limped, you ISO raised from the button to 7 big blinds, and they called you. That's kind of a weird, what kind of player limps and then calls for 7 big blinds? Why not just raise 3 big blinds in the first place? So like you're training yourself by looking at those hands off the felt and developing their range. You're training yourself to think about your opponent's range. So the next time you're up against them or a different player like them, you've already went through 20 of these hands where you built your limp caller's range. That's going to give you a pretty good idea on the felt against them next time, the kinds of hands this kind of player calls with. Now you're going to have a better idea once that flop hits the turn, the river, how to potentially exploit that player.
Yeah, and as I'm fond of saying, practice makes better. And this is the kind of thing where it's just doing it more and more and more. You're not going to get perfect at it, but you're going to get better at it. And you're going to internalize it to the point where now, when you're in the hand in real time, you've already kind of started putting them on that range at first. You're already kind of naturally reducing the combos as you go through the hand. And not only is that easier for you, but now you get to actually use the active part of your brain to think about other things in the hand that are even a little, less tangible or maybe a little more arcane, or something that's less immediately obvious but might be really relevant maybe even later in the hand. So the more we can practice this, the more it's going to become really like a secret weapon for us at the table.
100%. And it develops that intuition that I guarantee when you're playing, 98% of your opponents don't do hand reading. So now you have like a really big edge against the majority of your opponents there, because you've developed that intuition and the feeling for their ranges and how it interacts with boards. And like you said, you can make good decisions now, but also later on when this pot really starts to grow, you can make some really good decisions later on.
Yeah, and we talk about how, bread and butter spots are important. We talk about how pre-flop hands, you see them all the time, whereas you only see river hands a little. So like this is one of those situations where hand reading is a really big tool, is a really valuable tool every hand. And not even the hands that you're playing, but the hands that you're observing at the table. Hand read your opponents, see how their tells emerge. Pay attention at showdown, look back through the hand and see, what can I learn about this player, and how can that make me a better hand ranging expert in the future. And so this is just one of those things that it's so central to every hand of poker you're going to play. I mean, I do some poker coaching. I always tell my students, or my clients, go check out Smart Poker Studies, the YouTube channel, 66 Days of Hand Reading, because doing it that often in that same way, having that process to count on, is something that's just going to become natural to you. And I think, especially, nerds like us, we get kind of caught up in the, oh, let's examine every branch of the decision tree and let's have this like perfectly elegant balanced strategy for every part of poker. But let's just stick to the really important stuff that we do every time and just get really good at this fundamental stuff. And I mean, you called it a secret weapon, and I think it's absolutely true. I mean, it's not a secret, but it's a secret weapon because no one does the work
Yeah.
to make it. So let your desire, let your let your drive be your secret weapon, and just brush up on this stuff. It's all publicly available. It's just you working on the lab with a buddy if you like. It's fun. I mean, and I even, if you have a database, go back on some hands of your own from a year ago and click the
Yes.
tab that says, what was it say, expose play heroes hole cards. Tick that off so that you don't even know what cards you started the hand with, and it'll be from long enough ago that you don't remember. And hand range yourself. You know what your opening range was in that spot. See how that develops.
For
All
sure. And
right.
if you have a terrible hand memory like me, you can do 3 days ago and you're not going to remember the hands either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
So, what are a couple, as people are getting more into this, and they're using PokerTracker4, they're using FlopZilla, they're trying to find some low-hanging fruit. I think recreational players, we have some big strides we can make. Are there a couple? Can you talk a little bit about like filters or reports or ways that people might be able to just to click a couple buttons and see something that illuminates their gaps? Like I really like, for instance, even some of the built-in stuff like the Hold'em hand range visualizer, or for cash players, the leak tracker thing, or the leak note thing in there. Is there a couple like real bread and butter studying spots, I guess, that you could share?
Absolutely. There are I have a lot of one-on-one students and they're four, the like top four leagues of most students, not everybody, but most. And this isn't in order. This is just order of me thinking about it. The first is calling two bets from the blinds. If you fold every big blind, your win rate would be negative 100. But if you run the filter for pre-flop, calling a two bet, hit OK, and then you see that in the big blind, your win rate is negative 220, you would have been better. Even every time you called with pocket jacks and tens and ace queen, you would have been better folding off or folding every single one of those calls. You'd be at negative 100 instead of negative 220, and you would have saved more than half of your costs there. That's the number one leak for everybody to check out first, not just the big blind, but small blind as well. So that's the filter. If you look at your stats, just pay attention to VPIP first. If you have the PokerTracker4 report set up by position, you can see your VPIP on the button, cutoff, MP, EP, throughout the various positions. If you look at VPIP and you see your VPIP in the small blind is 38%, but your VPIP on the button is 22%, there is really something wrong there. You're playing more hands out of the worst position than out of the best position. That's a huge error. Now, if you notice that, and then you run the filter for calling two bets, I guarantee you're worse than negative 50 in the small blind and worse than negative 100 out of the big blind, because you just can't help it. You're playing way too many hands. Guaranteed you're not doing it as a three better, right? If you're VPIPing that much, it's as a caller. So those are the first two things. Look at VPIP, call two bet. The third thing would be two bet. Like you made the first raise pre-flop. Maybe somebody limped and you raised over the top, folded to you, you raised first in. Either way, you made the two bet and then you called a three bet. Too many players have win rates of, so if they raise first in for three big blinds, if they folded every single time versus a three bet, their win rate would be negative 300 out of 100 hands, right? Three big blinds each time, fold them all, 100 hands, negative 300. But sometimes I have students come to me with a two bet, call three bet at negative 450, negative 600 big blinds. Holy cow. you're calling way too much. You're calling with hands that are super weak. You think all of your opponents are bluffing with pocket fours and ace five, so you're calling with ace nine and pocket sixes. You want to set mine too much and it costs too much. So that's the third issue.
Uh-oh. I think we got to...
Flop. So
Okay, good.
if you think about it, you're calling because you should have a good reason to call. Your opponent made a C bet. You think they're bluffing. You can bluff them later. You have a good price on a draw. You have top pair. They're betting second pair. Like you're ahead of them. There should be a good reason to call. When you call C bets, your win rate should be positive in the long run because you're voluntarily putting money in as the caller. Like you should have a good reason. If you don't have a good reason for it, that means you're making bad calls and your win rate's going to be negative. That's the fourth. And I said four earlier, but there's the fifth one. Calling on the river and losing a ton of chips. I have students who call on rivers and they're okay. There you go, Chris, and Jim too. Okay. You call on the river. Your win rate when calling on the river, I'm sorry, your winning percentage when calling on the river might be 25%. So for every 4 calls you make, you win 1. You're making some bad calls right there. But then when you filter for that, calling on the river, and you see that it's negative 2,200 big blinds each time or per 100 hands, that means on average, you're losing 22 big blinds every time you call on that river. Huge leak that people need to fix. But earlier, Jim, you said that, I can't remember what we were talking about exactly, but you said those river spots don't often happen. And that's true. Those calling on the river doesn't often happen. That's why I mentioned all the pre-flop stuff first. Once you work on pre-flop stuff and really fix those areas, that often fixes your post-flop stuff. So just imagine, you're calling rivers too much and you're losing a ton of money. If you call out of the small blind less, call out of the big blind less, you're going to be facing less C bets, less bets on the flop turn river. You're going to be hopefully in a better position when you get to rivers and face a bet. So work on pre-flop before post-flop. And those are the 5 things that you want to focus on right away if you're first time thinking about this stuff.
It's amazing how there's a knock-on effect with that kind of stuff, isn't it? And you know, the more we work on the foundational stuff, the fundamentals, the pre-flop, it's amazing how powerful the ripples are of just getting to the flop with a tighter range, with a stronger range. Just getting to the flop with a stronger range does wonders for all your post-flop stats because you're just less exploitable. You're making fewer mistakes. You know, you're proceeding with a stronger range. It's amazing. So we got a question here from one of the members in the chat. As you know, Rec Poker premium members are always welcome to come and join us here for the podcast recording and hang out with our celebrity guests like Sky Matsuhashi. So Roger says, regarding number 4, calling C-bets post-flop too much, can you filter for when you are slow playing a strong hand? Yeah, that's interesting. Sky, how do you filter some of those less obvious ways of looking at hands?
What you can do, and it's kind of complicated, but there is a hand strength or a made hands option within PokerTracker 4. So you're going to go to the hands and enter in, for example, you could enter in top pair, right? Calling a C-bet on the flop, turn, or river, whichever street that you think you're calling too much on. So first, look at your fold to flop C-bet, fold to turn, fold to river C-bet. If anything is below like 30%, you're probably calling way too much. Not 100%, but probably, right? That's an area to look into. So if you fold on the flop only, I don't know, 30% of the time, you probably should be folding more. So you could filter for call, flop, C-bet, and then add to that filter holding a top pair, holding 2 pair, holding trips, holding a straight, and you could see. But you can do that, but what else? The other thing that you could do is simply look for call, flop, or filter for call, flop, C-bet, look at the resulting hands, and you can see right there in the layout for PokerTracker 4, you can see your hand strength and then the flop cards right there. You can tell whether or not you called with slow playing top pair, second pair, or 2 pair, whatever it might be. And the general rule is, especially if Roger, if you're a micro stakes player, do not slow play. Your stakes are full of fish. It's your job to get as much value as possible. So if you're just calling flops and turns with top pair and 2 pair, that's fine often for the flop. But at some point, unless that board gets ugly, you've got to be getting value while the getting's good. And so raising or betting yourself is the key thing right there. And if you find yourself, and it happens to us all the time, we slow play something and they get there with a straight on the river or a flush on the turn, or whatever it might be. And we just boned ourselves because we didn't bet for bigger value sooner in the hand when we should have, or when we had a great opportunity to get value.
So we're sort of at the time that we said we'd hold you to, but can you tell us just a little bit about the Poker Forge and what you've got going over there right now?
Absolutely, yeah. And the Poker Forge, I have it's a monthly or a quarterly poker training website. I focus specifically on cash games, online cash games, and there is plenty of good stuff in there for tournament players. As you can tell from everything I've said today, all of these exploits that you can use or people use against you in cash games, those are perfectly applicable for tournament play as well, right? I just don't teach specific like short stack stuff, ICM things for tournaments. So it's mainly micro stakes online cash games. And I have 9 different courses. I'm building the 9th course right now, and that's called HUD Mastery. And that's where all of my Poker Forge members are going to learn how to use the HUD to the max to exploit their opponents, to plan on the flop for the turn, plan pre-flop for the flop, turn, river, all that kind of stuff. So that's my 9th course right there. And I absolutely love it. That's my baby, the Poker Forge. And I'm so glad I did that. And I've got so many great students that are constantly leaving comments. We have a great Facebook community and everything. Absolutely loving the Poker Forge.
That's great, man. And I know Andrew Feist, who's our Learning Partners director, he includes a 10 to 15 minute clip of your material every month here at Rec Poker for our premium members to enjoy. I think the one this month was, so I missed the flop, now what? You've got just some really, really great training videos out there. So thanks for sharing that with us and with our premium members. You're a real resource to the poker communities, guys. So thanks for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And speaking of resource, I do have a resource for the rec community when it comes to learning PokerTracker4. So I created a new program recently, which I call Get More from PokerTracker4. Nice and simple program. And it's 3 videos totaling 77 minutes in total. And I go through all of the most important, most useful aspects of PokerTracker4 in those 3 videos. And if anybody wants a PDF with all the links and information, they just click on the link, watch the video, take notes, and not just take notes. It's a whole do as you consume program. The goal is you're watching it with PokerTracker4 open on the screen, like as you're watching it. You're clicking all the same buttons I'm clicking. You're getting to learn PokerTracker4 by actually doing the work while I'm doing it in the video. So if anybody wants that, all you got to do is go to smartpokerstudy.com/PT4 program. So letters PT number 4 program, all one word right there. Totally free, 3 videos, 77 minutes. You'll love it.
What? Okay, I was going to ask people how much it cost, but you're just giving it away. Okay, hold on. Say that URL one more time because now I'm going to write it down. I have to check it out.
smartpokerstudy.com/PT4 program.
Okay, you're going to get some questions from me, buddy.
Oh yeah, you just put it in there. Oh yeah, cool. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, sweet. All right, well, Sky, thank you so much. We're going to take a little ad break here and take care of some community events on the other side, so we'll let you go. But it's always a pleasure, my friend, and good luck with everything, and I hope we see you again real soon.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, Chris, and John. I appreciate, and everyone else in the chat. Thank you very much. I'll catch you later.
Sky.
All right, see you.
All right, well, let's hear what Jonathan Little has to say, and then we'll jump right back on here. Any moment, I promise. That's what we're going to do. We're going to hear from Jonathan Little.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
Oh man, Steve makes this look so easy. I sit in for him for 1 week. I've already screwed up 2 audio cues. Where's Ben Enslow when you need him? Oh God Almighty, he'd be raking in the dough tonight. Well, that was a fun one, wasn't it, gang?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's always
Absolutely.
love talking HUDs with Sky.
Yeah, I think I'm going to really have to go through that program he's got there. It's one of those things where I've heard people talk about. So I've had a HUD back in 2004, ran a HUD for several years till about 2011, 2012. But I never got into doing a lot with it. I mean, it would double check. I double check my win rates with it and things like that, but I didn't really use the HUD effectively or, anything like that. So conceptually, I understand what they can do for you. I have not achieved much of the benefit. I have purchased them and maintained them, so I have kind of all of the pain, none of the gain.
That's right.
That's how I want to do it, seems sometimes.
You
So
just love the struggle, John. You love
yeah.
the journey.
So that's something that I definitely need to do. Get more familiar with it, get used to clicking on things, even so that then I can come back later and say, okay, I know this was possible before. How do I do that again?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's such a powerful tool. There's a lot to get out of it.
Yeah, and even like just this month, I use it all the time, but just even this month preparing for some of the seminar stuff that we did and some of the content there, I was just digging into some other things. I was like, oh, I found a few little nuggets that I have been really trying to work on. And where you can really find some sort of glaring, if you're willing to like look yourself in the mirror, you can find some glaring holes in your game.
That's a big part of it, Chris. You're saying it. You got to be brave.
Yeah. And so, I mean, but it's all there, and there's no hiding from it. It's the choices you made and the ways you played hands, and they went how they went. But
yeah, well, there's something like we said before. It's extremely valuable just to be able to track your own results accurately, your own frequencies. To cast a light on yourself objectively. I think that's really valuable. And if people don't have PokerTracker4 yet, you can go to rec.poker/resources. There's a link there, and if you use that to buy PokerTracker4, they help us out. It's one of the ways we help keep the lights on here at our mostly free community at Rec Poker. And we'd be so appreciative that I'd actually email you our Rec Poker HUD for free as a way of saying thanks. So if anyone doesn't have PokerTracker4 and is thinking about it, go and check that out. And we do have some training videos up, like rec.poker/gym. There's a couple of videos there about PokerTracker and how to use it. I do a monthly group coaching session using PokerTracker, Jim's PokerTracker4 review group that all the premium members are welcome to join. But we don't really have this kind of video. So if Sky's already done and made the perfect version of it, maybe we'll just keep referring people to smartpokerstudy.com for that kind of stuff, because we can't improve on a lot of that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll check that out. So, as Steve is fond of saying, what's going on in Memberland?
Well, we have, I don't know if you're aware of this, but every week rather, we play like 10 different home games. So if you want, I could run through some of the winners of those.
Oh, why not?
Okay.
Why not?
Well, first we had our mixed game championship series, and none other than Chad McVean won our Limit Hold'em event.
Oh, wow. One of the great ones. Good for you, Chad.
And this was not enough to get him into first place, but he is officially in second place. So right now we have two Canadians. Patty 98 and McVean as number 1 and 2 in mixed games. So I'm calling on all the Americans to get out there and show that we can play mixed games too.
And I'll tell you something, those guys are buddies. It's not like everyone in Canada knows each other, but those guys are buds. They get along. They play poker, even not in the Rec Poker home game, if you can believe it. So that's great. I love to see that maple syrup up top. Way to go, Chad. And Patty, you too. Way to keep it proud.
Well, all I'm saying is I may forget to schedule the next mixed game next month if we don't, pick up the pace here a little bit.
That's right. Challenge. We're throwing the gauntlet down on the border battle.
And then we had another silver pin winner with the Daily Series Tournament of Champions, none other than Captain Walleye Rob Ansem
Wow.
won his very first
The
Tournament of
captain
Champions.
gets the elusive
Yep.
silver pin. Well
Good
done,
for
Rob.
you.
I'm
Well
still
done,
waiting
Rob.
for mine. I
Oh.
believe of the three of us, only one of them has an asterisk tarnished silver pin.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm
The
wearing
rest
the
of us
wrong
don't
hat
even have
tonight. I
that.
should be
I
rubbing
guess-
this.
At this point, I'd take an asterisk tarnished silver pin.
Well, true. It is questionable. So is an asterisk tarnished silver pin better or no silver pin?
Oh,
Yeah.
I wake myself up in the morning every day in a cold sweat wondering that. I'll tell you.
Anyway, on to our daily series. For nightly events, MN Ted Philip Fuhrer got his
Nice.
third for the year.
Well done, Phil.
Better man Rob Gracioso got his first nightly win.
Nice.
Keck Geek 65, Jacob Kiki got his fifth for the year, 14th lifetime.
Welcome
Nice.
back. Jacob was pretty excited. I saw him tweeting out on Twitter that the streak was over. He was on a cold streak for a while, but I'm sure we'll be seeing his name a little more often around here.
I don't know. I kind of liked having some other names.
Yeah, me
occasionally,
too.
But, but good job. Congratulations. Glassjaw 2222. David Shun got his third nightly victory for the year.
Yeah, I've seen his name coming up there more and more. Congratulations, Dave.
And Benmar Elizabeth Bennett
Nice.
Martin got her third nightly victory for the year.
Awesome. Another Canadian. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Taking over.
And then for the daily series mixed practice event, Poker Geek MN John Somsky got his first for the year.
Hey, I know that
What?
guy. I know that guy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well done,
Celebrity
John.
appearance.
Well, that was even in Badoogie, which is one of my favorite mixed games too. So I think it really helped that it was clear through the first couple of levels that some people did not understand the rules. You know, they'd have the pair or they'd have the flush and they'd not realize. So just to level the playing field out there, what you want is 4 cards, no pairs, no doubled suits. So ace through 4 suited is the best possible hand.
There you go.
Yeah. To be fair, Badoogie is the poker game that sounds the most made up to me from its name.
From its title to its
Yeah.
playing structure.
Yeah. It does feel like of the mixed games. It's like, wow, what is this? What is this?
Yeah,
It's the most alien to me.
It is poker like, but given that you don't actually use poker hand rankings at all, although you can argue Raz doesn't really use
Right.
much of poker hand rankings either. So anyway.
I'm glad we got one of these mixed practice games every Saturday, because that's a good point, man. Because we were just having the second Wednesday of every month, and that was the only time we got to play these games. It was fun to go in cold, completely not knowing how to play the game. But I think this is probably better for the game and for the players to have a few weeks of just trying it out first. Yeah,
absolutely. Notice I'm not putting an asterisk by my window, even though my opponents didn't know. I might be a bit of a hypocrite. We'll see. So for international events, East Coast Bitter Ben.
There's Ben.
4th.
There's Ben Enslow.
International for the year.
He was due.
And Michael Babker got his first international victory.
Beautiful.
And last but not least,
this is amazing.
LPP Sunday event.
Wow.
Colin Anderson.
No.
Wow.
Gloves 10-10 goes back to back. That's
didn't he win it? He won it last week.
He
wow.
did.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Wow.
And
well
I got
to
not only did he win it last week, but he told us that he wanted us to give that prize away.
Yeah.
And LPP would have credited him his payment for that month, but he said no, give that prize to someone else at Rec Poker who doesn't have it. I want them to feel what it's like to have a month of Learn Pro Poker membership. And that good karma catapulted him to a back-to-back win just yesterday. So he actually texted me earlier today and said basically that, the karma was there. He wanted to put that month up again. So we're going to find a way over the next little while
I
to
mean,
spread
it's
the
just
Colin Anderson
it's
love.
just going to be Colin Anderson spreading out
We're gonna-
memberships all over the
Yeah.
land.
Pretty soon we're gonna just have to force him to take it so that
Yeah, right.
he doesn't keep winning. You know?
That's right. Yeah, we got to break this train up at one point, right? So if anyone has any, I mean, we're not in a rush to do it, but Colin is just being such a generous, great sport about this. I want to take advantage of it. So if anyone has any ideas for some fun ways that we could give these awards away, these prizes away, it's a free month to learn pro poker. So it's worth 35 or 40 bucks or something like that, depending on how you sign up. If you sign up by going to rec.poker/resources, you get a little discount, just letting you know. So yeah, email me, jim@rec.poker, or tweet me at Hold'em_Steelers, and let me know if there's a fun way we can give these out and introduce some people to LPP, because it is a great training site and we love being partners with them. All right, sweet. Thanks, John. We did pretty well with that one.
Yeah.
And
I didn't get interrupted by Steve a single time there.
we could get used to that. We could get used to it. So, Chris, talk about the seminar and the focus and what else is exciting in Memberland.
Yeah, well, so we're gearing up. Next week, we're going to be recording our first ever new format for the seminar. We're going to be talking about satellites. People are going to get to play while there's commentary. We're going to talk about it after the fact. We're going to debrief. Probably some things will go wrong, but it's going to be fun. And I'm super excited about the format as we kind of grow into this, and we'll keep as we get it going. We'll probably show a little bit of a sample at some point so people can see it, even non-members. But I think it's going to be super exciting, and I'm really excited about it. And then in the focus, we're really trying to narrow in on some of the tools like the ones we talked about today, particularly taking our first steps. Some people are really curious about using the tool of GTO plus solvers. How do you even approach them? And so the next time we're meeting, we're going to actually go through some of it live and build some stuff live. One of the reasons I don't love to do that is it takes so long. But what I realized was this never occurred to me earlier. What I realized is that the results aren't as matter as much as the process. So we're just going
Yeah.
to set the error rate, or the whatever that the rate is, where you can, like, it's going to be wildly off. So it's going to be like 25-30% or something. So it's just like, this is not going to be an accurate depiction, but we're going to go through how do we set it up. And I think that'll be really useful. And so that'll be our next focus
That's
conversation.
great. I'm really looking forward to that, because we do have a couple rules. Like, I try and not ever do math live on the air or in our sessions. We try never to like learn how to do something in a new filter or something live on the air, because it's just terrible. It's terrible podcasting. It's terrible video. But some of this stuff, it is that, like, the struggle of doing the thing is what we're trying to capture. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think just being able to see it happen in real time, and being able to be in the Zoom webinar with you in real time, and to say, hey, Chris, can you just, like, what if you did this instead? Or, what does that button do? That's one of the things that's really valuable for me to learn. So that's for any premium members. That's one of the perks. You can come and join Chris once a month in the focus. We do the seminar once a month. On Saturdays, I host a study group that picks up where Chris left off, and we talk about some of that material. And then we also talk about Learn Pro Poker and some of their training material in another one of those study groups. Let me see.
What I thought I heard you just say was that in general, we try not to say things when we don't know what we're talking about. And my conclusion to that is I have been talking way too
You've
much
been
during
doing
these
this
podcasts.
too wrong.
Way too much.
Actually, that's funny, John, because we're making some changes to the website and to the forum and things like that. And one of the things that came out of our conversation internally was we should be sharing when we're unsure. We should be sharing when we don't have the answers. And, like, how can anyone ever learn if they're only ever talking about things that they are sure about, or that they already have the answers to? Part of what makes Rec Poker special is that we're here to be wrong. Being wrong is an opportunity to have people who you like and respect, bring you closer to truth. And we talked last week about the book study where we had some disagreement about how to apply a certain formula or something. And it's just rec poker is a place where a disagreement doesn't have to be an argument. And so being vulnerable, sharing when you're not sure, that's what it's all about. I'm still not going to do math live on the podcast, but maybe that's more of an ego thing.
It's just wise. It's just wise.
Yeah.
So this podcast comes out on Tuesday every week. If you're listening to this that day or the next day, on Wednesday, the 26th, we'll be doing our online review and hang. And this is one of the things that, we do a lot of things for community members for free. We do a lot of things for our premium members. This is one of those in-between things where we're going to be reviewing the final table of last month's Tournament of Champion, hand by hand, going all the way through it and analyzing it and talking about it with everyone who is at the final table. So whether you were a premium member or not, if you're just a community member, if you're just in the home games playing and you're in the final table, you'll get a message from me saying, hey, come join us with the premium members in the panel and let's talk about your play. Let's go through every hand, every street. And we have a lot of fun with that. Sometimes it takes a few hours, but we have a good time. So you can check that out at rec.poker/events. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always just email me, jim@rec.poker. Well, what else should we talk about, folks? I feel like we hit the high notes. I know there's so many cool things going on and we could just keep this rolling, but coming up on an hour, let's send our audience home with their ears. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me too. Well, I'd like to thank Roger and Martha and Kim in the panel, in the chat. I'd like to thank Chris and John, of course, Sky Matsuhashi for coming and sharing his stuff, and Steve Fredland, who can't be here, but I'll see all y'all again soon, I hope.